Meet now. All right, let's get started. Status updates. Anybody have anything yet? I could mention a little bit of what I've been working on, starting to set up some of the Tecton related issues and creating a new version or an upcoming version for the Tecton tasks that we have. I can go into a little bit more detail as one of the agenda points that I added on there.
I've been doing recently, mostly working on somewhat release planning. I did, had some small PRs cleaning up with the pack commands, but we will get into a bunch of the open questions I have in the release planning thing. So.
I haven't really been doing anything with pack, especially since my focus has been more on the distribution team. But we are continuing to make efforts on the API, the search API. Spent some time just before break on rewriting it as a Rails API backend. And I've been spending time this week moving all the front end aspects of that into the Rails asset pipeline. So making good progress over there.
Just real quick, do you know if there's going to be a distribution subteam sync as well? Is that something that you've thought of?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this morning. I need to talk to Joe. It's just the two of us, so it's obviously a lot easier to communicate. But if there's other people maybe interested in just having broader, more inclusive discussions, it sounds like it would probably be a good thing. I imagine. I just need to sync up with Joe and see what his thoughts are, and also just from a Salesforce side of things, I'm actually going to be switching roles. So there's going to be some disruption momentarily with that, as Joe is also, I think, switching some roles on his end as well. But I think once things settle, he and I will sit down and have a discussion and think about what makes sense for that. But if you have any inputs or thoughts too, yeah, let me know.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, at least it's something in our minds, right? We could keep talking about it. Cool. Any other status updates? All right, moving on to release planning. All right. David, do you want to kick some of this off?
Sure. So it's been a while since we've released, so we probably should release. There's a bunch of open questions I had that we kind of had some internal VMware discussions, but I wanted to kind of raise with the team. So the first is there's two open PRs that I'm debating whether to or not to pull in or wait for the hold the release on. The first is Dan has a PR about pushing cache images. We had a kind of long discussion, internal discussion today about trying to dig. It seemed like there were some weird like 504 like issues that we were getting Probably because when we create these cache images for for Java, so the M2 cache is like the Maven cache is massive, and seems like we don't in the lifecycle we don't do like good chunking of or we don't really chunk the requests, so it just tries sending this massive blob. And if you don't have a great network connection like I do, meaning I don't have one, then it will cause some issues. But it works with GCR and it works with some other cases. So, and the code seems correct. So we were leaning towards pulling that in for this release, as long as, just, I don't know if, whether or not we want to publicize it so intensely, if if still the standard registry people use is Docker. So I don't know if it's like something we'd want to publish, especially widely, until we're more confident that it would work for everybody's use case. But I'm wondering what people think about that.
If I recall correctly, the image cache situation comes more or less from, I guess, CI/CD solutions, right? People that are using Pack and CI/CD solutions. And in most cases, they either have their own registry or they're using maybe even GGCR or GCR, sorry. I haven't heard of a lot of them using Docker Hub, right? Especially now with the rate limiting and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I feel kind of comfortable going through with that direction, and even publicizing it would be good. And then I know we talked about potentially making a blog post for it, and then just being kind of maybe explicit in that blog post that Docker Hub currently has a limitation in which bigger layers might be an issue.
Okay, great. So that was one thing. The
We know if
second
it
is that
works for GitHub, like registering. I'm just imagining the CI solution where someone's like pushing their cache to GitHub registry as well. Have we tested the same large layers there as well?
probably should. Okay, so we should keep in mind some validation for that. The second is there's like a draft PR from one of the people associated with Red Hat and Podman, making some changes for Docker host. I'm a bit nervous to pull this in, especially because I asked Micah to check into it, because I know he interacts a lot with setting different Docker hosts, and he had some reservations. It seemed like about it. I would rather not pull it in for this release and kind of make sure that it's a bit more settled before we do that. Anybody feel strongly otherwise? Okay.
I think that's the right solution. I'm also, there's definitely some concerns there as well. And I'd rather we pull it in right after we make the release and then kind of have it being tested via the main branch.
Exactly. The last thing is one of the major epics in this, release has been about like moving to more of a subcommand. So currently, all of those stories were kind of delivered. The only one that has not is about the pack inspect subcommand. We were trying. Javier and I kind of had some discussion on the issue, trying to figure out what's like a good UX, what makes sense. I kind of feel like it's fine to, to defer it also defer the question for now and see what people think. But I wanted to see whether anybody else had any strong feelings on that.
So to elaborate more, this is where we now have resource-based subcommands, right? And so we've got things like pack, config, pack, what are some of the other Buildpacks, and so on.
Buildpacks, builder, config, and that is it for now, I think. But config has a whole bunch of stuff inside.
Yeah, and it's just inspect would still be kind of this concatenated thing, right? Where we do pack inspect dash builder, pack inspect dash image. Yeah, I definitely don't have a strong opinion. It would have been nice to be clean cut, but it's just one command, or one set of commands, I should say.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, we may be printing warning signs, but we're not actually deprecating any, like fully deprecating any of the old commands. So everybody, like, there's no major changes that need to be made. Also because we want to get feedback and see whether people are happy with it or hate it. So the last thing is, I guess in that case, I'll probably try and pull the pushing cache images PRN, and then we should get around to cutting a release branch and doing something of CCB. I don't know if anybody wants to cut the release branch and get involved in the release process. If no one wants to, I'm happy to do it a bit later. But just kind of, let me know if anybody wants to be involved. Those were the release planning and things I had in mind.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, David. All right. Moving on to discussions needed. We've got nothing. Is that true? Or did we change the label?
I know you said you were maybe going to go into detail on something. Oh, sorry. You're looking at the next discussions pack list. Never mind.
Yeah. Oh, the label discussion needed. Interesting. The label is different. Updating the link right now. So we do have a few. Maybe we could go through those real quick. These are in pack. David, I don't know if you want to go through them, if you have more context on them. If not, I can go through them.
I haven't looked at all these for a bit.
So environment variables not accessible at runtime. Dude, sorry, I'm having technical issues apparently. Okay, so this one.
This is about, you wanted to have build time. You wanted to have build time environments or also be able to set in for runtime. Something.
Yeah, it seemed like they want to add runtime invars as well, like as a feature to pack, like feature requests.
How would we do that? Isn't...
Can the lifecycle do that? I guess generate
the build packs themselves can do it for sure, right? Do you
You'd
launch
have to create a
environment
layer or
variables?
something, like a pack layer, but I guess those wouldn't get pulled in because there's no build pack associated, right?
So I wonder if this is a very pack specific thing or something that really requires an RFC. But then again, I'm not sure that I have the full picture just quite yet.
Yeah, and his example of bash echo would mean that this doesn't, he's not expecting them to be exposed through lifecycle. He's expecting it to just be set on the image itself.
There was an issue recently, maybe on the life cycle, where someone asked a similar question about where are these environment variables set, and Emily explained that the launcher is responsible for setting them so that the actual container config doesn't have them. I think the resolution was, like, this is the approach that we've taken, right? Like there's reasons why it's not set on the image itself, but I don't know if that's relevant here.
Yeah, and I would think that that's true because some of it has to do with, what is it? The process type, right? So like each process type has its own set of environment variables, something that I know we've looked at in the past. Unless we're talking about now, quote unquote, global environment variables, but that would be something up for discussion via RFC.
I do wonder if like pack build env, I think, like you said, you've seen confusion with this before, but I'd hate to add the word build to it, but I almost want it to say build env, right? So that you know that it's only for the build and it's not going to be part of the runtime image unless a build pack does it. But I don't know, it's already under the build subcommand.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I would defer to David and all those that will continue moving forward with pack to see whether or not that makes sense. But right now, I think some of the things that we should add to this issue are things like, we would require an RFC if we were talking about global-based runtime image environment variables, due to the fact that we have multiple process types and each process type has its own set of environment variables. And then something to clarify that we can do on Pack's behalf would be to update the flag itself. Does that make sense? So I could take that on. I'm losing my place. Pivotal, what's that? Cool. All right, so any other relatively new ones that we should talk about? Enterprise proxies, I think we've already talked about this. I'll follow up on this and kind of say that we are likely to move forward with this. And David, maybe I'll just kind of get with you and make sure that that makes sense as well.
Yeah, I remember looking at this issue came up, but I haven't looked at it for a bit.
Cool. All right. I don't want to take up the whole time going through these, but we probably should take some time to look at them. Seems like we're kind of adding a few. All right. Next one. I mean, is there any, or are there any of these that anybody wants to discuss? Maybe that's a more appropriate question. Okay, going once.
All right, now.
Going twice. Gone. All right. We'll probably just do that every subteam sync. All right, next one, resurrecting Tecton integration. So I added this. Kind of want to give a mention here that as I've been working with the Tecton catalog a little bit more again, one of the things that's adding some complexity to how we add changes or make changes to the Tecton task is that the current Tecton catalog now has this idea of versioning built in to the file system. So if you look at our tasks, right now we have task 01 and 02. And so what this would mean is that if we wanted to make a change within this repository, we would essentially create a 0.3 and kind of create a PR. And this PR kind of doesn't look that great because it's essentially like a copy and paste and there's no real diff. It's all new files. And furthermore, like if it's a small change, it requires that we release a whole new version, right, for every small change. And that's something that I'd hate to do and instead add more value per release. And so what I'm thinking about is creating a development workflow that actually uses the Tecton integration repo and we could kind of point to it from the catalog that all development happens here. And then we could kind of do something similar where we'll create, a release process that has milestones associated to it, where we could batch features. And then once that is complete here, push it up to the catalog, or copy and paste it essentially to the catalog. The other thing that this would allow us to do is add tooling for better end-to-end testing across different platforms or different K8s distributions. So things like Kind, OpenShift, and GKE are things that we could do within this repo. So wanted to mention that, and so it doesn't surprise anybody. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, let me know. Cool. Anything else?
The only thing I was going to mention is I'm starting to work on some platform stuff that's similar to Pack, where we're downloading Buildpacks. I know there's a lot of nice, helpful. I like all the URL parsing and figuring out what kind of locator it is, which is really cool to see. Kind of looking at the Pack code and getting familiar with that. So I might have some questions around like some of this, because we'd like to leverage, as much as possible as far as like, detecting these URNs the same way, so that someone can build in Pack and then build on our platform without having to, run into gotchas between the two platforms. Who would be best to talk about that stuff if I do run into any questions or concerns?
I think Joe actually did some of that.
Did he? Okay.
But it's also, let us know if it's, like file an issue if it would be helpful to have it be part of either public part of the API or move it to like image util.
I know a lot of it's already
with archive
public, but some of it is not. I noticed as well, right? Like I know like inspecting the URI. I think there's something called like ensure Buildpack support and stuff like that that may start making makes sense to.
So I was thinking about this recently before the break, and let's see if I could find it. Maybe not. So I put a link to GGCR, and I think I do wonder if a structure more like GGCR is really what we want from something like Pack, right? Where you have a very specific, Go library mechanism, right? Where anybody that is writing a Go program could leverage. But then at the same time, instead of just having Pack, like actually have like other tools that are a subset of Pack, right? And in this case, something like, I don't know, like downloader, right? I'm just making stuff up, right? Or platform utils,
or package locator or something, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would have been great to have right off the,
Yeah. So like the idea, especially in a Go repo, and I think again GGCR is a really good example of this, is you could have multiple executables and you could have multiple packages, quote unquote libraries, in a single repo, right? So if we were to do that, I think we could provide better flexibility, but at the same time remove a lot of the burden of trying to like create separate repos for everything, and then having to maintain like an upstream workflow. Kind of, it's a little painful to update stuff in image util right now, right? And then have to like walk it down to get that implementation back in.
Because we've already sort of had to, even though Pack processes the project descriptor, we're having to do the same thing because we need to emit an order toml. Well, Pack's already sort of doing that, but it's doing it sort of on the fly when it talks to lifecycle, right? But they both have, if they both produced an order, toml struct of some sort, and one writes it and one doesn't or something, like you said, these little utilities to like process a project descriptor or process an order or whatever, download Buildpacks, like that, those would be some utility functions would be super useful.
So since you have certain use cases in mind, do you think you'd be able to do something like create a proposal of how a structure would look like that more or less resembles something of what GGCR is doing?
Maybe, yeah. I don't have as much familiarity with GGCR, but I have used some of their tools before, like installing Crane and stuff like that. And so I think, we could start talking about that probably. Where would you want this proposal to live? Like in the pack repo or something?
Do you want to make use of the discussion board that we have?
Sure. Yeah,
Ooh,
I can go find that somewhere. I don't even know where that's at.
Community discussion.
trying to like, I don't know, arbitrarily boost our numbers. Like, wow, we have 2 discussions.
We have 2 discussions. Yeah, it's up 100%.
Right.
I wonder, do you think we should, if we do that, do you think, there was that request to export the archive package, and now there's some pushback from ImageUtil, and like we never really got around to finishing that. We could at the moment, move that into a package at least, so that someone can consume it still.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
That's
at
more or
least
less the train of
packages would be
thought.
good. Yeah, exactly. Like the first step would at least be making these packages, and yeah, you might have to wrap them in your own Go for now, but being able to have like a downloader would be useful for all platforms. So you just don't you can just bump the builder version, right, or something, to suddenly support the new URNs that Pack is supporting or something one day.
Yeah, the other use case is the Project TOML, the prepare stage, right? Taking the Project TOML and then creating the files that the lifecycle would use.
Yep.
Cool. Anyways, yeah, if you want to start a discussion on that board, it'd be an interesting way to kind of test this discussion board. And I think it would be appropriate to throw some ideas before we concretely create an RFC.
Cool, will do. Definitely. I've got to hop
Awesome.
for another meeting. I'll see you later.
Same. All right. See y'all.
And see ya.